Presentation tonight is again hosted by our DEI committee, but it's really focusing on the construction industry, which is a priority for American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. We know that suicide in the construction industry represents the second highest industry for suicide, and the first being mining and extraction, which is just more heavy industry, actually. And so, a partner, Bechtel, wanted to do something about this. They worked with us, they gave us a grant, and Talk Saves Lives Construction is a specialized presentation. And it also has some other components to it as well that we can get into that can be given to the industry, to industry people. It can be given on a job site. There's a longer version and a shorter version. And there are toolbox talks, which are just kind of like conversation starters that can be given during safety updates in the morning or whenever those safety updates happen. All of this just to get this concentrated information directly to the people who need it the most. And having said that, I'll go ahead and get started. This is just the disclaimer that says that this is not a substitute for mental health care and that this is a presentation that is typically given by volunteers or staff members such as myself and not necessarily a mental health professional. And again, should not be a substitute for getting mental health care. So in this presentation, what you and anyone who sees the presentation will learn is by the end, you should be able to describe the impact of suicide in the construction industry. You should be able to recognize suicide warning signs. You should be able to provide examples of how to approach someone that you're concerned about. And you should be able to list some ways to seek and offer support and resources for yourself and for others. So how we talk really matters, and the language is so important. And so I just want to spend a few minutes talking about how we talk about suicide. And so on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll say these are kind of the preferred ways that we talk about things: died by suicide, ended their life, made a suicide attempt, or there was a death by suicide. And by the same token, we try to avoid saying things like committed suicide. This is still such a common way that a common phrase that people use to talk about suicide, but we avoid using the term committed because if you think about it, what types of things are committed? Crimes, mortal sins. So it just carries kind of a linguistic weight that we don't want to put on suicide loss survivors. And it also implies a level of agency that we just don't believe that the person who is making an attempt has at that moment, right? They're not really making a choice. They're just sort of they're acting not really within their usual frame of mind. We never want to call something a failed attempt or a successful attempt because if you think about those terms, they're very problematic. A failed attempt means that the person survived, and I would consider that a success. And a successful attempt would mean that the person died by suicide, and that's a horrible failure on every level, right? We also want to avoid sharing details about a suicide, including the method or any graphic details, as this can be really activating for people who may have had an attempt or have lost a loved one to suicide. So we'll talk just a little bit about the scope of the problem. Suicide is a leading cause of death in the United States. Each year, millions of people think about suicide. In fact, the latest CDC data is going to come out soon, and it's going to state that over 2 million people report having considered suicide in the previous year that was measured, which is 2024, which is heartbreaking. There are well over 1 million people in the United States each year who survive a suicide attempt, which means that most people who make an attempt do not go on to die by suicide. More than half of all suicides are carried out by a firearm. And it turns out that most people, most of all people are affected by suicide at some point. And so it really makes it a universal issue that everyone should care about and that there is something that we can all do to prevent it. The impact of suicide is particularly devastating in the construction industry, where over 5,000 workers die by suicide annually. This represents one of the highest rates of suicide compared to other industries. Every day we lose about 14 construction workers to preventable deaths, 2 to 3 from job site injuries, and an alarming 12 by suicide. Construction workers account for over 12% of all suicide deaths in the United States. And for every suicide death, there are 33 other people who attempt suicide. That's 522 attempts per day in construction alone, which equals out to one attempt every 3 minutes. Over 50% of all firearm deaths in the United States are suicide, and more than half of all suicides involve a firearm. So there's really no way to talk about suicide prevention without talking about firearm safety. And we will talk about that a little bit more in detail as this presentation continues. So, not surprising, suicide rates among males are generally higher compared to females across all industries. And in the construction industry, male suicide rates are twice as high compared to males in all industries, though still lower than those in the mining industry. So, as I said, mining and extraction being the highest. But again, that's still to me in that heavy industry category. And this line across the graph shows the average suicide rate across the working male population. So you can see how much higher it is in construction and then again in mining. Yeah, so there's no single cause for suicide. When someone dies by suicide, people may see a life event or life stressors, like the very last thing that may have happened to that person. Maybe they lost a job, they had a bad breakup, they lost a pet for maybe, and they assume that that event caused the suicide. But we know from research that that's not how it works. Suicide is complex. It never comes down to just one event or one cause. There are usually so many interacting factors at play, and the context looks very different for each person. So the first thing we'll talk about are risk factors for suicide. And as the slide says, these are things that increase vulnerability. There are things that can make someone more vulnerable to suicide over time, like changes in mental health, substance abuse, past trauma, or chronic health conditions. They don't cause suicide on their own, but they can add up and factor into someone's overall risk. Even though people may have various risk factors, most people will never act on thoughts of suicide. And this is because protective factors are also present, and most of the factors are dynamic and always changing. While construction workers are vulnerable to the same risk factors for suicide as others in the general population, there are definitely risk factors that may be unique to the construction industry, including a workplace culture that encourages bravery, stoicism, or self-sufficiency. Those in labor-heavy positions can experience chronic physical pain or injury, and we know this is a big risk factor even in the general population. And this may lead to prescription pain medication, and of course, prescription pain medication could interfere with job performance, sleep, mood, and it, of course, can just increase the risk that they may misuse their pain medication or become addicted to it. Construction work also sometimes involves very cyclical work with regular periods of layoffs and rehiring. And so this may cause economic uncertainty about employment, financial stress, loss of access to insurance or other employee benefits during the cyclical time when maybe they're not working. Um, Working long or abnormal hours is very common for people in the construction industry. And construction sites that include access to bridges and buildings can definitely increase a person's risk for suicide, and particularly during a crisis period. Creating a work environment that fosters communication, a sense of belonging and connectedness, and respect can help protect against suicide risk. Peer support and access to mental health care are also important ways to reduce suicide risk and maintain resilience. So, protective factors. You heard me talk just a little bit about that. These are things that build your resilience, and these can be things that sort of mitigate the risk factors. They are protective. They include things like social support, engaging in mental health care, problem-solving skills, strong relationships, and a strong sense of purpose. The more protective factors someone has, the more support they have to get through difficult times. And this is across all populations, not just the construction industry, obviously. So, a suicidal crisis may occur when a person with underlying risk factors for suicide, some of which we talked about, they experience stressors that feel overwhelming or unsolvable in that moment. And in that moment, cognitive changes, what we kind of refer to as a tunnel vision and intense hopelessness, can come over someone, and then that increases their suicide risk. So during that period of crisis, brain functioning can cause some people to be less able to consider other options or use their coping strategies that they usually would use in this type of situation. In that moment of crisis, they literally cannot foresee a time when the unbearable pain will end, and they may become focused on suicide as the only way that they can think of to end their pain. Keep in mind that thoughts of suicide are complex, and each person has their own path to feeling suicidal or attempting suicide. We've learned that most people who experience suicidal behaviors are ambivalent about taking their life. Part of them wants to live, but part of them just wants to end their pain. The thought of ending their life is usually part of their mind's problem-solving process in that time. They may think that if they weren't around, it would be better for their family and friends. Some people may feel that their psychological or physical pain or feeling of being trapped won't ever change, and they may feel overwhelmed with hopelessness. It's also important to remember if someone is experiencing a suicidal crisis, thoughts of suicide are often temporary. They can come on very quickly and then they can dissipate very quickly as well. This is why keeping people safe and supported is key. And we're going to talk a little bit now about how we can help to do that. So, just like with other health issues, there are steps that we can take to prevent suicide. For example, think about heart disease. We know that reducing things like smoking will lower the risk, while promoting health behaviors like exercising and eating healthy will protect against heart disease. And the same is true with suicide. We can work to reduce the risk factors that we mentioned earlier, while at the same time building up the protective factors. So, in the next few slides, we'll learn about the importance of watching for the warning signs, for reaching out to someone if you're concerned about, or anyone that you're concerned about, and also having those conversations that can be so awkward, but so important. You want to help individuals make their environment safe, and you want to be sure that you know what resources are available for yourself and for others if you need to connect people to some resources. So, step one in suicide prevention is to watch for the warning signs. We talked earlier about risk factors, which are different from warning signs. Warning signs, risk factors are those things that might exist in the background. They could be environmental, health, uh, maybe genetic things that may exist in someone's background. But warning signs are observable signals that someone may be suicidal. So think again about that example of the heart attack. High blood pressure or high cholesterol are risk factors that may increase chances of a heart attack. Chest pain is a warning sign because it signals that a heart attack may be happening. Suicide warning signs are typically displayed in these three main ways: talk, behavior, and mood. And we'll look at the slides here and take note of some of the most common warning signs. So, first, talk. That's the first bucket. Many people are surprised to learn that those who experience suicidal ideation often just talk about it. It's really important to listen for comments that they might make, like saying that they have no reason to live, being a burden, feeling trapped, or being in unbearable pain. Sometimes they will talk about it in a joking manner, but I encourage everyone to take even those joking comments very seriously and use them as an opportunity to open up a conversation. A lot of times, it's pretty common for people to broach a very sensitive subject by making a joke about it as a way to kind of introduce it and kind of lower the tension. But again, we want to take it seriously. If it turns out not to be a concern, that's fine, but I would always take it seriously, even if they are presenting it as a joke. And then the second bucket here is behavior. So these are behaviors that, you probably would recognize as a warning sign for someone who may be entering a mental health crisis. So increased alcohol and drug use, sleeping too much, not sleeping enough, reckless behavior, which I think is very key in the construction industry, not taking good care, not being thorough, not locking things up that need to be locked up, not making sure things are latched that might need to be latched. So I think this reckless behavior is a very important one for the construction industry. Things you may not notice as much if they're not close friends of yours, but you may as well if you're close with your colleagues. They could be withdrawing from activities that they typically really like to do. They could be socially isolating. They're not going out with the group anymore after work. They're not, coming to things, parties, activities. They could be actively looking for a way to kill themselves, and you might notice that. Giving away possessions is a big one, and I could see that definitely being a factor within this industry. And of course, missing work or declining work performance or just a bad attitude is also definitely a risk factor. And then the final bucket is mood. And these are a lot more subtle and can be a lot harder to notice. Everybody's got their moods and they swing from minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day. They could, a bad mood could last a couple hours, it could last a whole week. So these are just a little bit harder to really put your finger on. But typically they present themselves as just ongoing depression, apathy, rage, especially in men, general irritability, impulsivity, anxiety, or a sudden unexplained change in mood. And this one is a really surprising one for a lot of people who see this presentation because there are times when a person who has been really down will suddenly become very, very upbeat and happy, and people will say, "Well, I thought that they were better," but their sudden increased mood is actually tied to the fact that they've come up with a plan and they anticipate a time now that they won't be in pain anymore. And so, even though it seems like antithetical, you kind of want to pay attention to that as well. It's a lot to remember, but we always say just trust your gut. If you feel that something is off, you have to assume that maybe nobody else will say anything, and you have to trust your gut, and you want to start that conversation to check in and see how someone is doing. And so that's step two, have a conversation, which is not always the easiest thing to do, and particularly about this topic. So it's just so important to have that caring and supportive conversation with someone that you're worried about, and you can't assume that someone else will reach out to them. If you notice these warning signs, you should start the conversation. And there's a few things that you want to do during this starting of this conversation. First, you want to avoid minimizing their feelings. We can't understand what they're feeling, but we just have to be there for them. Second, you want to avoid getting into debates about life not being worth living. If a person is nearing a crisis point, they're not thinking clearly, and a philosophical debate about life being worth living is not going to be helpful. You want to avoid offering any advice on how to fix it. If a person is having a heart attack, you wouldn't run up to them and tell them to start exercising or that they should start eating healthier in that moment. The same is true for someone in a mental health distress or crisis moment. You don't want to offer them advice. You just want to take care of the crisis in that moment. And then lastly, as a peer or a colleague, it's not your role to diagnose or provide mental health services. You want to encourage the person to connect with the available resources or mental health support, either that's available through the workplace or just in the community in general. If they're in crisis, what they need most is to be just heard by you, non-judgmentally, and connected to professional help. And here's some tips that you might use to start the conversation. Because again, this is an awkward conversation. We're not used to having these types of conversations with people. I would say the most important thing is to remember to speak to the person in private. It could be a difficult conversation, so as private a setting as possible would be preferred. Start the conversation with an expression of that you care, and then followed by an observation, and then let them know how much you care and that you're not going to judge them. These are a few examples here, and there's a few more on the next slide. You want to ask some open-ended questions and then listen for warning signs, those language things that we talked about, maybe in their responses. That sounds really hard. I'm sorry you're dealing with so much. Are you having a hard time with that? I care about you and I want you to be safe. Um, how does this make you feel? I hear you. I'm here for you. You want to show empathy and support with your words and your body language. And I'm going to get ahead of myself here. It's also not a bad idea if you are comfortable sharing, that you've had similar struggles or you've had a time where you needed to go access care and help, knowing that someone they know and trust has also gone through something similar and has found their way to help kind of destigmatizes the entire thing and lets them know that recovery is possible and help is possible. So this is also a very surprising slide to a lot of people. Ask directly about suicide. Some people will do worry that asking someone about suicide will put the idea in their head or push them into that action. And research has shown over and over and over that this is not true. If you think someone's considering suicide, trust your instinct, as we said, and ask them directly. Are you thinking of ending your life? Are you thinking about suicide? It is so important to ask this question directly, instead of putting it in someone's head. Reports have shown that it actually reduces anxiety and reduces stress in that moment because someone else said it out loud and now they can openly talk about it. And it's like a burden being lifted off their shoulders just to be able to have that subject openly, talked about and giving them that opening to talk about their feelings. And then respond accordingly. It can be really scary if you do start this conversation and it turns out the person you're talking to is really having a hard time and is really struggling and is in a mental health or suicidal ideation crisis at that moment. So once you do ask directly, you just want to continue to listen, provide support. If they tell you that they're not thinking about suicide, but they are struggling with their mental health or just going through a hard time, I mean, great. You've opened up that doorway. They know they can always come talk to you, and you can just give these sort of helpful phrases. I'm sorry you're hurting so much. I just want to be sure that you're safe. I want to be sure that you have the help that you need. Um, if they are thinking about suicide, this is where you need to just stay calm. Just because someone is having thoughts of suicide, it doesn't mean that they are in immediate danger. You need to take some time to calmly listen to what they have to say and ask these really important follow-up questions to learn more. So you might ask, do you have a plan? Have you thought about how you would do this? Do you have a method? The method is what we call the means by which someone is going to make an attempt on their life. If it's a firearm, can you store it safely? Or even medication, can you store it safely? Ideally outside your home until you're feeling better. And the main thing is just staying with them. I want you to be here and I'll help you get through it. Just the isolation of going through these feelings can be overwhelming. And if nothing else, if you can stay with them and keep them safe in the moment, then you've really gone a long way towards helping them. Okay, did I? No, that's good. Okay. So you'll need to close the conversation, right? At some point. You're going to reiterate that you're glad for the chance to connect with them. You're going to remind them that we all have challenges at time, that you'll continue to be there for them. Um, you could again at this point share maybe a personal story if you've had a struggle of yourself or an experience that they could relate to that would help them feel like there is hope. You can say things like, thank you for sharing with me. Would you like me to help you call your mental health provider tomorrow during our lunch break? Like making these like finite moments in time where you're going to check in next. I would definitely make a date to check in with them again, right? Not just, I'm here for you anytime, but I'm here for you. Let's talk again tomorrow morning when we first get to work, or let's talk again this evening. Text me when you get home. I want to know how you're doing. I would just definitely make a very solid plan to talk with them again and to let them know that you're with them on the journey and in any way you can help, you're there to help. So step 3 is keeping the environment safe, and this is critical. This is maybe the most important slide in this entire presentation, so I'm just going to read it. Time and distance are the most important things you can put between a person and their way of ending their life. Research provides clear evidence that in the moment of crisis, time and distance can be life-saving. Time for the intense crisis moment to pass, and distance between the individual who is experiencing this painful moment and their method for ending their life. Even before someone reaches a crisis point, keeping the environment safe is a great way to proactively reduce suicide. So how do we make their environment safer? How do we keep them safe in the moment? So whether we're talking about firearms or other methods commonly used in suicide, there are some strategies that we can use to make the environment safer, especially in the home. And it's a proven strategy that works to prevent suicide. For most people in suicidal crisis, if they're unable to access their chosen method, even temporarily, they are unlikely to choose an alternate means to end their life. I'm just going to repeat that. So for a person who's in a suicidal crisis, if they're unable to access their chosen method, even temporarily, they will not look around and find another method. That tunnel vision that we talked about earlier is so intense that they don't look around and find another method. The suicide attempt does not happen. That gives you extra time, you or anyone else extra time to intervene and get them to help. Um, so during a period of high risk, the safer their environment is, the better chance that the person experiencing a suicidal crisis has of living through that crisis period. For firearms, strategies for secure storage are to lock, limit, or temporarily remove. Um, if they can lock it up in a safe, that's great. Try to make sure that all the firearms are unloaded and disassembled. A trusted person could change the lock, keep the key, change the combination on the lock. Um, the strategy that has proven most effective at saving lives is to temporarily remove firearms completely from the home. Consider giving the firearm or the non-regulated components, because sometimes you can't just hand off a firearm, but you can hand off like a key part of it so that it won't work, to a trusted person that will just hold on to it. And of course, these laws vary from state to state about if you can hold someone else's gun or what parts of that someone else's gun you could potentially hold. So just be sure that you're keeping that in mind. Store the ammunition, maybe store some key part of it that's going to make the gun, not usable in the short term. Other ways to restrict lethal means are to secure medications, including over-the-counter medications and all toxic substances. You might also ask the person you're concerned about, what do they need to feel safer? Really encourage them to refrain from any kind of substance use, maybe even getting, alcohol out of the home, and encourage them to discuss keeping their environment safe on an ongoing basis, even, after you've given back their firearm or whatever medication you may have been storing for them. On an ongoing basis, they need to have a conversation with their mental health professional about how they can keep their environment safe. They've shown that even blister packaging on medications, where it just takes a little bit of extra time to push a medication through, it can be a life-saving intervention. And so then the fourth and final step is to connect to resources. Obviously, there's only so much we can do as non-professionals, and so this is the critical step to making sure that they continue to get the help that they're going to need to get better. So if someone has a suicide plan or is in a crisis and is not safe, maybe they have already made an attempt, you do need to take immediate action. 988 is the new National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It provides free and confidential emotional support to people in suicidal crisis or emotional distress, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It's got a huge network of crisis centers across the country. Here in Illinois, if you call, it's fantastic. They connect you to someone within seconds. I really can't say how wonderful 988 has become as a resource in Illinois. And Illinois used to be at the very bottom of the list for the old Lifeline number. And so it's completely flipped. And now it's one of the best response times. And you're going to be answered by somebody. It's going to be answered by somebody in state who can connect you to local resources. And of course, there's the crisis text line. If people don't feel like they want to talk, they can text, obviously, and you can even text 988 as well. If there's a medical emergency, like an attempt in progress, you're going to have to just go ahead and call 911. It's too late for 988 if they've already started taking an action to end their life. We know that 911 can be problematic for Black and Brown communities in particular. And so we want to try to get way upstream of having to call 911 and get them connected to 988. If you do end up having to call 911, many communities have mobile crisis response teams, people that are trained to respond to mental health crises. So if you end up calling 911, you definitely want to mention that it's a mental health emergency and ask that the mobile crisis response team respond if possible. If you do have to call 911, you do want to mention that, and hopefully you'll get a trained crisis response person that will come out. And this is just a little bit about our resources. Hard Hat Courage, like I said, was founded in partnership by AFSP and Bechtel. It's evidence-informed suicide prevention tools and free trainings like this one. Here is our contact information here at the chapter if you ever wanted to get connected to any of us, and we will send all of this out, obviously, in a follow-up email afterwards. Highly recommend that you come out to this Illinois Construction Hike for Hope on Saturday, June 13th. There's one in Downers Grove, one down in Grafton at Pere Marquette State Park. Just a great way to come out and show support. And just to remember that suicide prevention is part of safety. We know that suicide prevention and mental health are just as important as physical safety on the job. And you can always request an educational program and resources through us. They're 100% free of charge, thanks to our wonderful donors and sponsors that come to our Out of the Darkness walks and our Hike for Hope. Just give us a call. We'll come out and give a training to 10 people or to 1,000, and we can do it virtually or in person, and we're so happy to do it. And the big takeaway, I hope, is that we all have a role to play in building a culture that promotes taking care of our mental health and in preventing suicide. This is a QR code. We'll send it to you in a follow-up email so you can let us know what you think about this short version of Talk Saves Lives Construction. And these are other ways to connect with us. And that is Talk Saves Lives Construction. That's the presentation. So thank you guys for listening.
And as Angela mentioned, we have been adding the resources as we've been going, but can follow up with all these links in one page.
Okay, are we ready to start? Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here for this important conversation. Tonight, we're talking about mental health in the construction industry, an industry built on strength, resilience, teamwork, and hard work, but one that also faces unique challenges related to stress, burnout, substance use, and suicide. Our goal tonight is not just to identify problems, but to discuss solutions, leadership, culture change, and hope. We want this to be an honest conversation that encourages awareness, support, and action. With that being said, I would like to introduce to you our panelists of the evening. First, we have Teresa Britton. She is the Director of Legal Operations at Exelon, the parent company of ComEd, and 5 other utilities along the East Coast. Teresa lost her son, Dustin, to suicide in 2023. Dustin was also part of the ComEd family, working as an overhead lineman, constructing and maintaining electric transmission and distribution power lines. Next panelist is Maria Campobasso, if I have that correct. She is a strategic partnership manager with Rosecrans Therapies. Maria works by helping improve access to mental health and substance abuse use treatment. She focuses on decreasing barriers to care by connecting individuals and families to appropriate care with brief screenings that helps connect individuals to the right level of behavioral health care. She's completed suicide risk assessments for adolescents and adults while at Rosecrans. Next panelist, Curtis Thompson. Curtis Thompson is the president of the LT Group and Associates Corporation and the president of the National Association of Minor Contractors in Chicago, the oldest minority construction trade association. NAMC assists members with building capacity by providing access, advocacy, and contractor readiness to the estimated 25 million minority workers currently working in the construction industry. Mr. Thomas is a graduate of Colgate University, where he earned his degree in economics. He is a suicide loss survivor who cares deeply about this issue in the construction industry. Last but not least, we have Travis Gorman. He started as an apprentice in the roofing industry in 2000. After graduating from the United Union of Roofers and Waterproofers Local 11 apprenticeship program and becoming a journeyman in 2005, he worked as a foreman off and on until 2016. In 2016, he was appointed as a business agent to the Roofers and Waterproofers Local 11. He currently still holds this title and is also a trustee and part-time instructor for the apprenticeship program. In 2012, Travis's brother took his own life on his 21st birthday after a few years of mental health struggles. So welcome to our panelists tonight, and we're going to go right in and start with our first question, if you all are ready. So our first question is going to be directed to you, Mr. Curtis, and then I'm going to ask Travis to comment as well. So the first question of the evening is, we know that construction has high rates of stress, burnout, substance use, and suicide. Why do you think these issues are so prevalent today? Mr. Curtis, can you start us off?
Thank you, Tammy. Some couple of the points were highlighted in the presentation earlier. The challenges are deeply connected to both the demands of the industry and the culture, which has historically existed within construction. Construction workers operate in high pressure environments where deadlines, safety risk, weather conditions, labor shortages, and financial pressures all come together at the same time. So, many workers get up before sunrise. They do physically exhausting work and long days. And they still carry the stress of supporting their family and managing that uncertainty. Um, and, another factor is, as mentioned, was that silent toughness culture that exists within construction, that has existed for generations. Workers are often taught to push through the pain, avoid discussion of emotions, and handle problems alone. So while resilience is important, that mindset can really discourage people for asking for help when they truly need it. And over time, that unresolved stress can lead to burnout, depression, substance abuse, and just a general sense of hopelessness. And then, for minority workers, they may face additional stressors tied to unequal access to capital, inconsistent opportunities, discrimination, and underrepresentation, and the pressure of having to consistently prove themselves in a competitive environment. These pressures affect, workers and families throughout our communities. So, and we also got to recognize that construction workers often are exposed to trauma in ways that people don't realize. They see serious injuries, fatalities, unsafe work environments, layoffs, and economic instability. And those things just have a lasting emotional effect on folks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Thompson. What would you like to add to that, Mr. Gorman?
I mean, Mr. Thompson touched on a lot of them in the slideshow before, kind of spoke on a lot of them, the unpredictable schedules, you may have a long job, then all of a sudden you may have 6 months off sometimes, which creates, unstable incomes, which is stress on families, the long hours, like Mr. Thompson said, you're leaving at 2, 3 in the morning, you're getting home 7, 8 o'clock at night. Now you add in, you're missing your children's basketball games, your wife is, or spouse, I should say, is taking care of a family kind of solo, all those things add to it. The substance abuse is multiple things, in my opinion. You look at all the stresses that come with the demanding work, the long hours, the uncertainties, the the income fluctuating, as well as the aches and pains of every day, of getting up and doing a physical job. I spent 15 years in the field, so I can speak from experience. You go home hurting some days, and some guys or people, whether it's man, woman, it's that they look to get rid of those pains through whether it's alcohol, but the opioids is a big problem, right? And then you head down that path and can lead to some other issues. And the suicide side of it is everything we spoke about above. And then you add in the tough guy culture, right? You're not supposed to go show emotions. You're supposed to just put your head down and work. You're not supposed to have problems. This is a quote unquote man of a man's job, right? Like you're just supposed to be tough, and I think, we have to work as leaders in this industry, whether it's a business owner, whether it's a union representative, whether it's organizations like yours, to educate, the workers in the field that it's okay to talk to somebody. And I give a speech to the apprentices, and one of the things I tell them is it takes a stronger person to reach out for help than it does to not reach out for help. And somehow we have to instill that culture into it, that it's okay to find help when you need it before it's too late.
Right, I appreciate that, because I think one thing I often hear too is that many workers are expected to push through pain, right? So you talked about that physically or emotionally. And in industries that value toughness and productivity, we know that people sometimes suffer silently because of that, right? And so in asking for help, they always look at that as weakness. And so that leads directly into another important issue. Even when help exists, many workers still don't seek support. So Maria, I'm going to address this next question to you. What do you think are some of the biggest obstacles preventing workers from seeking mental health support?
Yeah, thank you. I think the presentation did a great job. One thing I want to touch on with the last question that Travis just made me think of, we have, workers have such physical pain, but then the toll of emotional pain. And I think that we can all kind of resonate with when you really, really feel it. And sometimes not really understanding or knowing the difference between when that is physical pain, when that's emotional pain, and when you need to kind of ask for help. I think a huge thing that's a barrier is always going to be the stigma. So many groups are doing so many amazing things to really try and reduce it. And we have seen the numbers of suicides within this industry trending in the right direction. They are going down, not in the mass amounts that we need them to, but they are going down. And I think stigma is the biggest thing in terms of being able to access or get help. I think we tell ourselves a story, whether you're working in this field or not, about what asking for help looks like. Oh, I gotta go do this. I don't know what they're gonna ask me. These are all of the things that I hear about because I'm the person, usually one of the first people that individuals or members come and talk to. And so when they're trying to access care, they really don't know what to expect. So they tell themselves a story, oh, this is going to impact my promotion. I'm not going to be able to get hired on a job again. I'm going to struggle with finding work. I'm going to get labeled. So there's so many things that really, I think, prevent individuals from asking for help. But then I also think that, like Travis and Curtis touched on this, that these are the individuals who oftentimes are the providers for their family, maybe the only providers for their family. And so they are the ones that are typically people go to ask for help. And so it's difficult for helpers asking for help. We want to increase accessibility for individuals when they are seeking help, because I think that when somebody does ask for help, like, we need to pick up the phone, and that's why 988 is so great. That's why my organization has put me in the position that I'm in the sense that, like, when someone calls, they may not call again. So we might get one time, and we need to answer their phone call when they do help. So increasing accessibility, I think people don't honestly know what is available to them. And I'm speaking very generally because I do think that the trades have really done a great job of increasing awareness. The fact that you guys are here today, that this is going on, is really, again, a testament to those things and increasing awareness about how this is impacting this group.
And I think just to add to that, I think many people struggle in silence because they fear being labeled, fear of being called weak and unstable, or even the fact of being unreliable. So I think looking at this as a male-dominated industry, emotional struggles are often hidden until it becomes a crisis, right? And so the question then becomes, how do we change the culture so conversations about mental health can become normal instead of uncomfortable? So I want to address this next question to Ms. Teresa. You can start us off. How can leaders normalize conversations about mental health on the job sites?
Yeah, thanks. I think one of the easiest ways to think by incorporating mental health care into their safety briefings. A lot of times, construction and the trades, certainly at ComEd, and before the crews go out on job sites, they will have a safety briefing in the morning, and incorporating mental health care, just like they incorporate physical health and safety into those briefings, I think can have a huge impact and normalize that discussion and that conversation. Mental health can affect performance. It can introduce safety risks. And so it is a natural organic fit to incorporating into those safety briefings. I also think crew leaders being deliberate and checking in with their team members and reminding them what resources are available to them to support their health, including mental health. A lot of times companies will offer all kinds of resources that support your physical health, but also mental health. ComEd and Exelon offers free subscriptions to Calm and Calm Health, which, you know, is an app that you can get for meditating and helping you through your mental health. Talking about mental health as you would physical health. So making it as normal as, hey, how are you feeling today? Oh, are you over your cold? You know, how are you feeling emotionally today? Are you feeling better? I know you were a little depressed last week. So asking people how they're feeling about their mental health. Are they feeling better just as they would physical health? And that, I think, really helps normalize those conversations into the work environment.
Okay, that's good. What about you, Curtis? Do you want to add something to that? Can you address that as well?
Yeah, just a couple things. Great comments by Teresa. But you know, just as you said, it starts at the top. The leadership sets the tone for the workplace, and if mental health is ignored at the top, then workers often believe that the topic could be kind of taboo or off limits. So that's important. And then secondly, I think that we must start the conversations early, even in a pre-apprentice, even our in our pre-apprentice programs and our apprentice programs and our workforce development programs. Young people entering the trade should understand from the very beginning that mental wellness is just as important as physical uh, safety and technical skills. You know, hopefully by introducing these conversations early, we can remove the stigma before getting on the workplace and unhealthy habits may take hold. And also, by doing that, we help create a new generation of workers and leaders who view asking for help as a sign of more like strength, um, responsibility, and just professionalism in them doing that.
Okay, and I do want to add something to you, and both of you all said it. Leadership sets the tone, right? And
Mhm.
it comes from the top. So when leaders openly discuss stress, wellness, or what have you, and talk about their own experience, it gives other people permission to speak up too. And so psychological safety is just as important as physical safety. And I think even where I work, and I think a lot of organizations are now trying to implement wellness initiatives. Matter of fact, Thursday, my staff, I'm going to be taking them out. It's our wellness day. So I get to do this quarterly with my team. Just the whole day we get to spend and do whatever. I had them to put little notes in a jar and I pull out the jar. What are we going to do? So I pull something out and whatever they want to do for that day, that's what we're going to do. And that's to help address some of the mental wellness. So with that being said, we're going to go to the next question. What wellness initiatives have actually worked in your organization? Teresa, can you address that at what your organization is doing?
Yeah, I think Exelon and ComEd is really, you know, quite progressive when it comes to providing this kind of care and support. We have it during the month of May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. We actually, the company provides and communicates, you have free access to therapy sessions. You have up to 8 sessions that you can do, and it's entirely free throughout the year. It's available to you all year, but they do communicate it more heavily during the month of May. They also have an employee resource group that is dedicated to mental health. So we have resource groups that are for different cultures. We have African American resource group, we have Asian American resource group, we have Pride resource employee group. But we also have now an employee resource group for mental health and suicide awareness and prevention to support our employees, because most of our workforce is in, you know, out there in the field in construction and maintaining the system. We also have as I said before, they offer a lot of free resources that they think can support people at home, which is like free subscription to Calm, which is an app that is really useful when you're by yourself and you want to get meditation or hear some short programs on dealing with depression, dealing with grief, dealing with loss. And then we also have just your regular health and wellness. So getting programs out there that help our employees eat better, help our employees exercise and motivate and promote that. So they'll pay for your subscription to a healthcare membership. So a lot of those programs, they're like, there could be small things, but they all add up and they're diverse in what the company offers in terms of wellness initiatives, so that what works for somebody might not work for somebody else, but they want to make a lot of these resources available so that people can tap into them.
Oh, wow, that is excellent. I love what the work you all are doing. What about at your company, Miss Maria? What are you all doing over there?
So we have a real big push for mental health in the workplace. And so we have a program called Let's Mind Your Mind. And that program is a really kind of entry level, like foot in the door opportunity to talk about mental wellness in the workplace. And so topics vary and they're very non-threatening in the sense. And so organizations can partner with us and we will go to them and, one is like one topic might be something like professional boundaries. So it's not kind of like, it's not so overwhelming in the sense where it's like you're struggling with depression, and that might impact somebody from showing up because they don't want to show up, again, based on that stigma. So they're really kind of like they start with a really soft landing as far as the topic, and then organizations can utilize us to encourage people to come, and then it's just a conversation. So we create that and have made that available to a lot of organizations, and we do have some construction industry specific topics that are available where we partner with some of these locals. We can also, I know a lot of the organizations that we've worked with have allowed us and our, because we are behavioral health, to be at their wellness fairs. And so just an opportunity if somebody needs a conversation, we just have a table with some information and, and if someone wants to talk, they can. Lots of education. So we do a lot of, like not podcasts, we do podcasts, but we do a lot of writing. So for your newsletter or something like that we make really kind of available. So that's how I've seen a lot of individuals in the trades really utilize and leverage us to help support the conversations and the ongoing conversations about mental health. And it's actually worked again really well.
Oh, and that's good. I think you all both have some excellent things going on at your workplace because most importantly, people want to feel seen, heard, and supported. And because it's not all about just giving them resources, but making real connections with them. And so beyond programs, workplace culture itself matters. And I think if we focus as leaders, focus on that piece, I think we'll be on to something, right? So my next question is, how can construction leaders create environments where every worker feels safe, respected, valued while maintaining productivity? Maria, can you address that question there for me, please?
Yeah, I would start by saying, and again, this was really touched on in the presentation that Angela did, is that we've been saying and reiterating over and over again that it starts from the top. Leaders need to talk about mental health, but we also need to think about kind of some of the ways that when I always say this, that like we have to know ourselves as well. And so really paying attention, if you are a leader, paying attention to how you present some of the things that you might say and like joking. And so I think language is a really huge thing. Leaders can continue to talk about mental health and then be mindful of when they are maybe using language or saying things like, I've actually heard people say like, well, I get told like, leave my problems at home. Everyone's tired, just deal with it kind of thing. And so just being mindful of like, are these some of the things that you are saying or that are coming out of your mouth, or even some of the the jokes. Like, I think that we need to have camaraderie and be able to joke around, but just being sure that that's not creating an unsafe space where someone might not want to come to you. I want to rely on some others to maybe try and answer the question about productivity, because I think that everyone, in terms of asking for help, we've kind of said that there's a fear of like lost wages, that they'll be kicked off of the job, or that it'll somehow impact their work. And so, can they be assigned to a different project? Is there something else that they can do within the job that maybe doesn't have such a high level of stress or put them at such risk? So those are some of the things. And I think it all goes back to that being able to ask for help, because I don't know, if we don't create a safe space for them to be able to do that, would they be willing to say, hey man, I just can't do this today. I don't think you guys get mental health days in the trades. But how can we create a space, or maybe leaders just paying attention to their workers and just being able to be like, do you need a minute, man? We have a campaign also called, it's just kind of like check on a buddy kind of thing, just like check on your buddy, just see how they're doing, and maybe see if there's something else that they can do. I don't know if anybody has anything else around productivity and how to make sure that people don't get taken from work. The one thing before I move on is, the one thing I do want to say is that making sure that a program can accommodate those hours that, Travis talked about and Curtis talked about. So like, if they're working long shifts, and, can an organization, if they are seeking help, switch them to virtual if they can't make it in, or, because sometimes things just come up out in the field and they can't really change it. So just making sure that where they go and seek help, whether it's their EAP, that they can then, have flexibility around it to match what's happening with their workload.
Did any of you all want to address the productivity piece, Curtis or Travis, the productivity piece on that? Otherwise, I had a follow-up question for Curtis.
Well, I'll just say we've talked about and brought up a few times that it's got to start at the top down, and I agree with that. And
Mhm.
I think as it becomes more acceptable, we'll call it, that people do have mental health struggles and stuff like that, and they're willing to bring it up, maybe you will see a shift in management saying, hey, okay, really this guy is less productive when he's here, not in the full state of mind, versus, getting a little bit of help and stuff like that. I'm not saying that we're anywhere close to where we need to be with
Mhm.
that mentality yet, but I do think that culture is changing a little bit to where a stable-minded individual on a job site is going to be more productive. And I think companies and owners and people like that are starting to realize that. So if a guy calls and is willing to speak about it and say, hey, I just have some stuff going on at home, it's the potential of losing a job or getting laid off or something like that is going to become less, because uh, a clear-headed employee is much more productive than one that's not. So
Absolutely, I agree. So, Curtis, from your perspective, how do issues like discrimination, underrepresentation impact mental health for minority workers in the industry? Can you address that?
Yeah, I think, kind of quickly, that it just magnifies the issue,
Hmm.
because the stresses are already there to begin with, just in construction. But then when you add up on top of that, the issues that you face when you're discriminated against, you're isolated, you're underrepresented on different projects. Um, it all comes full circle. So you magnify what's already there, and that can be very concerning for the minority workforce component.
Okay, thank you. And we're going to move on to the next question. And I'm going to have you to start us off on this, Miss Teresa. What can coworkers do when they see someone struggling emotionally and mentally on the job?
Sure. I would answer this by sharing a little bit of my personal story. As you stated at the front, I lost my son to suicide. And a year before he died, he had been off on leave. for a couple of months while he was seeking mental health care. And he was released to go back to work. And before he went back, he came to me and said, "Mom, I'm really nervous." And I said, "Why? Why are you?"
I think you're breaking up.
And he said, do you think you forgot how to do the job? And he said, "No, no." Oh, I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yeah, it's
Whoops,
better.
my internet. Okay. He said, "No, it's not that." He said, "I'm worried about what the guys will say. Um, make fun of me, or they say, why did, we had to do all of your work while you were off on some vacation." So he was very worried about how he would be received when he went back to work. And not knowing what they would say, I tried to encourage him and say, they're going to be fun. They're going to be supportive. They're not, they're going to be good. And so when he did go back, I talked to him at the end of the day and I said, "Well, what happened? What did the guys say?" And he said, "They were great. They were so supportive. They said, 'We're so happy to have you back. We hope you're feeling better. You let us know if you need anything. We're just happy to have you back and that you're feeling better.'" And it was at that point in time, in that place in his life, that getting that kind of support, having his coworkers be kind and understanding and helping him in that moment, saved his life in that moment, because he was feeling hopeless. Like, this isn't going to work. I can't go back to work. I don't think I can take it. And getting that support from his coworkers really, really helped him and saved his life at that point in time. It gave me another year with my son. And so what I would say, if you see somebody struggling, it is about that peer support. It is about listening and paying attention and being open to, it's okay to not feel well mentally. And how can I help you? How can I support you? Because you in turn may need that same support at some other point in time. So, the peer support, being kind, being gracious, you never know what people are going through, really goes a long way to helping someone when they're struggling mentally and emotionally.
Thank you so much, Teresa, even for sharing your story. Marissa, can you also address what coworkers need?
Yeah. And I think, Teresa, you did a great job and always appreciate hearing your story. I think you speak to something that I talk about in construction, outside of construction, that we all just have to have a safe space where we can talk about whatever it is that we need to talk about in that moment. And so I think about that in this sense of, like, if someone is being yelled at or bullied or, just kind of given a hard time, those kinds of things. If they're not going to feel safe enough coming to you, let's say that I don't know, someone leaves their tools out, or a tool is like rust or something, and then they get yelled at the next day, and that can be a costly thing. So I don't want to minimize that. But if you get yelled at or chastised for something small, then I don't know that creates such a safe situation for you or makes you feel safe enough when you have something big, right? So just being really mindful of, like, when when individuals are getting irritated about small things or mad about small things, because if we are mad about the small things, then when someone needs to come to us for those big things, they're not going to feel safe enough to come to us. So I think that creating just an opportunity for someone to, like, I always talk about it in the sense of, like, open doors, right? We want to just have open doors for individuals. And so that when they choose to walk through that open door, that we're going to be there to receive them. And so whatever that looks like for you, however that is. And I think a lot of times too, I think we always kind of have to do our own work and know there are some of us who aren't comfortable with those statements. They don't want the information. And that's okay, right? We don't always need to know exactly what to say or have the most perfect thing to say, but just being sure that like when someone does come to you, like even if you yourself has like the tiniest little thing that then, hey man, thanks for telling me that, you know, who can help you with this, and then go find somebody else who maybe you feel is more equipped to handle that story, that situation, or that comment than you, but not to shut them down, right? But know yourself, know what you're going to be comfortable with. I think in the presentation that Angela did, she talked about humor as a way. We oftentimes use humor as a way to mitigate the seriousness of it. If you know that that's how you manage things, maybe just come up with something yourself again, just so that you can like acknowledge it and then find them someone that they can talk to, or someone else who can help and is maybe more comfortable with those hard conversations, because that's what they are.
Yeah, that's exactly what they are because sometimes people don't need us to even have all the answers, right? They just need someone that's willing to notice, willing to listen to them, and even show that they care. And I think just a simple "Are you okay?" can really save a life, if we take time to do that. And despite the challenges that we've discussed here tonight, there is also a reason to give people hope. And that takes us to our next question. And Curtis, if you can start us off, what gives you hope about the future of the construction industry?
One thing is conversations like this, right? We're seeing more leaders recognize that workforce wellness, inclusion, innovation, and sustainability are all connected to the future success of the industry. There's growing awareness again around mental health, around diversity, workforce equity, and the importance of creating pathways for underserved communities. More organizations are investing in training, mentorship, apprentices, technology. Um, so we have to realize that a lot of minority contractors that typically are the first to hire minority workers are non-union.
Mm,
And they may work on small projects, residential projects, smaller commercial projects. They may not have access to creating the resources in-house that could be of the best benefit for their employees. So a chance to connect to programs like this, organizations like this, are key in developing the next generation for our industry. So that's exciting for us.
yes, it is. And so, Travis, what gives you hope about the future in the construction industry? Can you address that as well?
Yeah, I mean, we keep bringing up culture change, and again, it's not happening as fast as we'd like to see it, obviously. But I do think the boat is slowly changing directions, so we have to continue to row it to get it on the right path. And I think, you know, organizations like this are huge. Um, Another thing that I think, whether it's the reality is the tough guys of the industry, the older individuals that work that have this hardcore mentality of you just keep your head down, your mouth shut, and you work. You are seeing some of that retire, those type of guys retiring, individuals retiring, and so you do see a little bit of a culture shift on the job site. And again, not happening fast enough, as we all know. But there is hope that as this next generation kind of comes along, the mindset is different. And I'll be one to tell you from personal experience, you know, when I started as a foreman, I was one of those guys. One of the guys that you keep your head down, you keep your mouth shut, and you work. We've got a job to do. I come to realize as my career went on, I got more productivity out of the workforce when they were treated with respect. Um,
Mhm.
and at the end of the day, I may have been adding to some of the mental health struggles these guys had just because I thought, you know, if I just pushed them and pushed them and pushed them, um, that's how we got a job done. You know, so it was a learning curve for me back, you know, 20 years ago. Um, And again, I think that goes back to you're seeing this culture shift with foremen, superintendents, and stuff as there is some attrition through retirement of the older mentality. You could potentially see from the top down again, there being a little bit more sympathy towards mental health issues and stuff of that nature. And a big thing is educating apprentices, pre-apprentices right from the get-go of the resources that organizations have for them. Within our local, we've got an EAP program through ComPsych who comes in and talks at an intro class. We are now partnering up with Rosecrans to come in and speak at our intro class as well. And again, it's just educating that these resources are there for them if they're not willing to speak with one of their peers or reach out to a peer, myself, somebody within their company or whoever it may be. And another thing that you're starting to see more of that I think is a fantastic idea is mentorship programs, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're finding the right people to be mentors on job sites. And if that's the only person that this individual feels comfortable reaching out to, that mentorship program has been amazing. And then it's got a lot of work to go, but you're seeing more and more organizations add these mentorship programs, and I think they're super valuable. So
Yeah, and like Curtis said, is conversations
Mhm.
like this shows a sign of progress, right? Because years ago, these discussions rarely happen publicly or even in industries like construction. Curtis, there is a question that someone asked. Let me see if I can get to the question that someone sent ahead of time. And while we're talking about this topic, before we go to our last question, maybe you can address this. It says they wanted to know how the National Association of Minority Construction is tackling job awareness and readiness for high school graduates looking to get a trade, as well as minorities who have been released from prison after being incarcerated before receiving their high school diploma and are without their GED. And if there are apprenticeships available, what are the qualifications and how does one sign up?
So I think the first part is how we're tackling awareness in high schools.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we, as far as NAMAC, like I say, we do workforce development programs, and we've actually got a couple of partnerships with high schools to work with, particularly their seniors that are in a carpentry program, for example, and just making them aware of the vastness of the construction industry. I mean, working in the particular trades is excellent, but there are a lot of careers around construction that doesn't have, you don't have to put on a hard hat, for example.
Okay.
For project management, engineering, architecture, all those professional services as well that are construction related and great career opportunities where you can earn a good income and take care of your family and have a good, um, productive member of society. So we do provide programs. We do have a pre-apprentice program that we do work with young people. We're open to returning citizens as well for that pre-apprentice program. And if you don't have your GED, which can be a requirement, then we have resources that can help you attain that GED so that you can participate in the training. Um, I believe that was the question. Was there another part
Yes.
of that, Tammy? I'm sorry.
Okay, and then just the last piece, you addressed it. It was like an apprenticeship program. What are the
Right.
qualifications and how does one sign up? And if
Okay.
if if there's a link or something that you can probably post in the
Yeah.
chat, that will be helpful as well.
Okay, we can do that. You can always go to the NAMAC website, namacchicago.org. There's some
Okay.
information there, or there are phone numbers there as well. And you can always reach out to us. If we're not having a program ourselves, we have other workforce partners that have programs that are currently running, and we can direct you to them as well.
All right. Well, thank you. And speaking of the next generation, and we're on our last and final question, and I'm going to start with you, Mr. Travis. What advice would you give to young people considering careers in construction?
I think, when I speak to potential apprentices, whether it's at career fairs or we deal with some workforce development programs as well. Um, I'm blatantly honest with them, I guess is the best way to put it.
Okay.
Um, there is an opportunity for a great career. There's an opportunity for a very livable lifestyle in the trades, but it can't be glorified in the sense of you're going to be working 40 hours a week. You have to put the struggles out there and be honest with them. You know, whether it's the best approach, I'm not sure, but I guess, you have to just let them know that, you may make 50% of your yearly income in 4 months. You may leave when the sun's down and come home when the sun's down for 3 or 4 months at a time. And then you may have a winter where you're off a month or two.
Right.
And I think you have to be honest with those things so they know coming in that there is an opportunity to have a great career, to live a good, stable life, but you have to understand there's going to be challenges along the way in the trades. Um, and it's just you have to be willing to reach out and talk when you need help too.
Yeah.
And not just necessarily mental health issues, right? If maybe you're struggling in an apprenticeship class or something, you need a little extra work with something, reach out to a coordinator or an instructor, something like that to help, advance your career to reach the full potentials it has. So,
All right. Well, thank you for addressing that. And I'm going to ask you to do the same thing, Mr. Curtis. Can you close us out with what advice would you give to a young person considering careers in construction?
Yeah, I certainly agree with what Travis said about being straight with them. And at the same time, we encourage young people looking to get into construction to come into it with a mindset of continuous learning. Um, the most successful people we find in construction remain, they're adaptable, they're willing to learn new techniques, committed to growing both technically and professionally, obtaining your certifications, apprenticeships, mentorships, internships. Um, we certainly encourage young people to seek a mentor in the field so they can get that real conversation about the challenges of the industry, the benefits of the industry, and how to move effectively, through the industry. Um, and to let young people know, particularly from underrepresented and underserved communities, that there's a place for them in the industry. You know, diverse voices, diverse perspectives um, are needed in our industry for it to succeed. And there's a place for them. It's important that they know that.
All right, that is absolutely great. And I'm going to bring Dimple on because there is a question in the chat that she's going to read that question. Go ahead, Dimple.
Yes. So they said thank you for a great discussion. And from your perspectives, what has been the hardest about managing a crew right now, especially given the pressure in the industry? What's been most helpful for you as a leader in navigating that?
And who wants to take
And
that?
anybody is welcome to answer.
Is that you,
But
Teresa, going to take that?
yeah, I'm not sure
Okay.
I'm the best panel member to answer this because I don't lead a crew. But I certainly, I've been with the company for 32 years and so have been in the field and around crews. And I will, from my personal experience, I think the best way is, and I don't know if Curtis said that or maybe Curtis, uh, respect. Leading with respect, leading with grace, and with patience and being open, I think really creates the environment that allows people to feel safe and come forward. And it allows others to speak up when they see somebody else struggling. Then you don't have that fear of like calling somebody out and they're going to lose their job, or they're gonna be seen as being not a team player. So I don't know if that really answers the question or if that's helpful, but I do think that that's a big piece of it. You have to have leaders, again, from the top down, that are just leading with respect.
Mhm.
I'll chime in a little bit to it, like
Okay, go ahead, Travis.
Teresa just said, respect, right? Like if you bring guys in onto a crew and they are verbally abused, and this goes back to what I was talking about earlier, kind of getting production out of guys when you show them respect. Um, right now, if you verbally abuse guys, it's going to be hard to lead that crew. Like anything, there could be rebellion in a way, right? Guys will say, "Hey, I'm just going to slow down if I'm not good enough," and whatever it may be. But that's a challenge. Finding good leaders is so important. And when I say good leaders, not just the guys or wimp females, because we all know the construction industry is shifting towards more females, and I think it's a fantastic thing, and there's some great leaders potentially there. And I think that, when you can find a good leader, it's not who can put out the most material in a day or, this or that. It's how they treat the crew as well, and make a culture to where people say, hey, I want to go work at XYZ, builders, because there's a culture there of respect and everybody enjoys being an employee there, than just saying, hey, I got to take this job over here just to make it, even though I don't want to work at that company because the culture's negative per se. So
Mhm. All right. This has been a great conversation tonight, and we definitely appreciate all of the panelists this evening. And one thing I want to say is that you can be strong and still ask for help. Mental wellness should be viewed as part of professional success and not separate from it. So tonight's conversation reminds us that mental health matters in every industry, including construction. So strength is not just about endurance. It is also about knowing when to speak up, support others, and prioritize wellness. So if we really truly want safer workplaces, stronger teams, and healthier communities, we must continue creating environments where people feel valued, not only for the work that they do, but for who they are. So thank you to our panelists for your honesty, leadership, and commitment to changing the culture. We appreciate you all being here with us on tonight. Guys, have a great evening. Thank you.